YouTube, what's up? We made it. Here we are. All right. Welcome, guys. Happy Thursday. Let me hit the smoothie here and we'll get going. So, welcome, everyone. Today, I've got some great things to share. I just got back from a trip to Sedona, Arizona, one of my favorite places in the world, looking at some potential homes over there. I'm either going to be moving at the end of May or I'm going to be traveling for at least a few months. So some transitions coming up in my life, which I'm very excited about. But let's see what else is going on. I want to talk about this is the subject of this video today. The title is Primordial Alchemy. What is that? Well, it's the name of the masterclass which I'm going to be teaching next week from tomorrow. You can find more details in my bio, in the description of this video. But this is going to be all about manifestation, how to manifest, and how to create massive change in your life, beneficial change in your life, how to get yourself into alignment with your purpose, with your real mission for being here, and how to bring in the resources to help you and do that. And there's one of the most focal points of this in the way I'm going to be teaching it is a certain Qigong form, which is called Primordial Qigong. It has been an absolute game changer for me doing this form. I learned it back in 2016, and I'm just now going to be teaching it and sharing it in this class next week. So I'm very excited about it. This form has completely changed my life. Everything I've brought into this form, it's a very specific kind of Shanggong spiritual Qigong form. Everything I've put into this form, every manifestation has happened. I'm gonna be telling some stories about what I've manifested through this form in a little bit. But again, getting into this topic of manifestation, again, I'm going to be teaching this in my masterclass next week. But manifestation being creating what you want in your life, bringing the things you want into your life. That can be, financial things, uh, your physical health, manifesting better health, manifesting relationships, a new living situation, a new career, whatever it is that you want. How do we create change in our life? This is the big thing that I've been interested in for over a decade now. And I've explored a lot of different, I will say, approaches to manifestation. Um, some that worked, some that didn't. And in this decade of testing out things and then eventually creating very, very dramatic change in my life, really bringing in things I couldn't have imagined having, 10 years ago into my life. Um, it taught me a lot about what's real in working with manifestation and what's just, kind of new age fluffy stuff. I think most of you are aware of law of attraction, but that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg, right? It's like, why isn't that working for a lot of people? How many people have this vision board of all these things, but none of it happens, right? So one of the keys I found with this is to have some sort of regular routine or ritual where you're aligning yourself with the forces of the universe. I know that's kind of a vague thing to say, but what does that really mean? Your level of consciousness and we could say vibrational state that you're functioning from has a dramatic effect on what you're going to experience in your day-to-day life. And when you get stuck in the mundane, you're stuck in reactive mode, when you're stuck in negative emotions, fear, anxiety, stress, it's very difficult to create the opposite of that, right? Which is what you really want. When you're stuck in these low vibrational states, it's difficult to create from that. So having some sort of regular routine, some sort of daily ritual where you raise your level of awareness, raise your level of vibration, you get beyond this kind of ground level where you're just stuck in the issues, the reactivity, and you get elevated, right? And this Qigong form, which I'm going to be teaching, is one of the most powerful ways I've found for doing this because it creates a dramatic shift. This primordial Qigong form, it works with all four directions. You create this spiral with the form that you're moving both clockwise and counterclockwise overall. It creates this counter spiral of energy. It creates this Yuan Qi effect. Yuan Qi is this neutral force, and it creates this portal. And you put your intention into this form as you're doing it. You repeat it over and over again, and you really have to do it yourself to see the changes that it brings in your life. I started doing this form again back in 2016. One probably the most interesting thing that happened for me is back then I was, still working minimum wage jobs, was broke, and but I was pretty strong in my practice, right? I was really getting into qigong and sexual kung fu. I'd been practicing for a couple of years at that point, and I wanted to go to this workshop in Colorado. There was a workshop on Chine Song, which is it's a type of kind of energetic abdominal massage. It's a very powerful healing practice. I wanted to go to this workshop, but I didn't quite have enough money. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna put this intention into this primordial qigong form, and I did it because it was like, okay, this seems like purposeful to me. This is the whole thing about manifesting as well, is you need a good reason for it. Like, okay, I want $1 million. Well, why? What are you going to do with that $1 million? Are you just going to spend it on hookers and cocaine? That's not going to serve you very well. So it's like this other, your subconscious mind, we could say your higher self, is not going to allow you to have that, right? But if you have a very clear reason for manifesting $1 million, if you're like, well, I want to have money to travel so I can go, study and deepen my knowledge, my abilities. I want to support those around me. I want to have a safe, secure home where I feel nourished, right? Then you have a good reason for bringing that in. So this is, again, one of the huge keys to manifestation is you must have a reason for it. It must be in alignment with you and your values and what your purpose is. So anyways, I put this intention in this form, like, okay, I need some money for this trip that I want to go on so that I can learn this amazing healing art. And literally, after I did this, I think it was later that day, it was maybe an hour later. I remember I was sitting doing my meditation practice out in the yard. I was living in this little like studio kind of cottage thing in my friend's yard. And I go up into my bed in this little loft area, and I don't remember why, but I was like reaching under my pillow. I think I was looking for something, and I felt this like what felt like stack of paper. I'm like, "What's this?" And I pulled out $500 in cash, like literally just it seemed like it just appeared under my pillow. No one had been in this house, no one had been there. I literally just out of thin air, $500. I was like, "Holy shit! Like this is insane!" And that was one of the most dramatic things that happened for me, having strong manifestation practice, putting this intention into this primordial qigong form. It still blows my mind to this day that this happened, And I've put so many things into this manifestation process that has happened. Again, like I've said, everything that I've really focused on using this process has manifested in my life. So, um, again, those of you who are just joining, I'm teaching a masterclass next week, Primordial Alchemy, which is all about manifestation, how to create change in your life, how to bring in what it is that you want in your life. And there's going to be some, various kind of mental, energetic tools, but the most important part is going to be a qigong form, the primordial qigong form, which works with all the directions, all the directional energy, feng shui energy. It's a very spiritually activating and accelerating form as well. Really activates the heart energy. It's absolutely phenomenal. That's going to be the focal point of this masterclass. And the thing you're going to walk away with is you will have a 15-minute routine you can use daily to balance yourself and harmonize yourself, connect with all the universal energies and harmonize yourself with this, dramatically changing chi field that we're all living in. That's the biggest benefit. And also putting that energy into creating whatever you want in your life, manifesting whatever you want. And one other thing I want to share on this, this is kind of a preview of what I'm going to be teaching in this class, but why isn't law of attraction working for a lot of people? And something I should say here is that I'm assuming that, or not necessarily assuming, but a huge part of this as well is having your sexual energy under control and in balance. You're cultivating that, you're working with that consciously. That's really the one of the biggest secrets as well, is if your sexual energy is out of control, you're just masturbating impulsively, you're just jerking off to porn every day, like it's just brushing your teeth. That's a habit. It's difficult to create from that uh, habitual lifestyle, because for a man, constant ejaculation is just wasting your gene and you have nothing to manifest with, because our sexual energy is our creative energy. So that's a huge part of it as well. But I'm not going to be going into that in this masterclass because I teach that everywhere else. So, but another thing that's holding us back from manifesting, even if you're like, okay, every day I'm seeing this, $1 million, the house, the pool, all these things, my career, whatever, but it's not happening, is that we often have these subconscious blocks within us. It's like you say you want this, but deep within you, maybe you actually don't want it, or you believe you don't deserve it. So we have these subconscious blocks as well. And so that's one of the biggest things to overcoming is your limiting beliefs, but most importantly, the subconscious patterns you have. So it becomes this like split thing where like you say you want this, and in your conscious mind, you're like, yes, I want this thing, but you have all these subconscious beliefs due to, the conditioning of your parents, your teachers, society, in your childhood, and you're carrying around all these burdens and baggage that's preventing you. It's not in alignment with what you say you want to create. So there's this conflict, and you're unable to create change in your life. So that's a big thing we're going to be getting into in this masterclass, as well as how to do that, how to remove these subconscious blocks. And I will say, just to share some things right now, what's been most helpful for me in doing this is going directly into working with your energy body, because that's where these patterns live. They're stored in your energy body. You can try to like think your way around them, be like, okay, well, I have to, I need this new belief system. You can try to work it from the outside in. You can have some success with that. But for me, what I have found the most efficient, and I've had the best results with, is directly going in, working with the energy through qigong practices, where you're basically becoming your own energy healer. You're creating new patterns of qi flow. You're clearing out blockages in your system. Meditation practices, breath work, yoga, opening up the body, clearing out old energy. These are phenomenally uh, powerful and important for clearing these subconscious belief patterns, which are preventing you from bringing what you want and what you're focusing on into your life. So when you're just really stuck, you're like, I'm working towards this thing. I'm putting all this energy into this thing, but it's just not happening. This is a really big thing to look at. Is it your belief system? Is it these, baggages and burdens and traumas you're carrying around that are preventing you from carrying this? So again, these are some tools I found very helpful for clearing these things: qigong, breathwork, meditation. But the primordial qigong form, again, it's this amazing thing where you put any intention, you put anything you want to work on into this form, and it accelerates that process of transformation. It really is an alchemical qigong form. So again, just to kind of wrap up this portion, I'm going to be teaching my Primordial Alchemy Masterclass next week, next Friday. Find more information in the description of this YouTube video and in my Instagram bio. You're going to be learning what's holding you back from creating what you want in your life, how you can have a 15-minute daily ritual to accelerate your spiritual growth, open your heart, and start to create, to manifest the things you really want in your life that will accelerate your purpose here on the planet. And this is all centered around the primordial qigong form I'm going to be teaching in this, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's been life-changing for me since I started doing this form. My life was never the same. So again, find more information in the description of this video and in my bio. And with that, I'm going to get into some questions. Feel free to send in your questions. Take a smoothie break here. Michael says, I continue to let go of the burdens. Oh yes, it's a process, it's a continuous process. William Zenowitz says, have you heard of Qigong? No, I have not heard of that. All right. Lucius says, greetings from UK. Please talk about metaphysical reasons for bacterial and fungal infections of your genitals, jock itch, and how to heal them. Sorry for always asking odd questions. And then second, if it kind of cuts out after that, just says second, if a gay. So maybe there's more to that. Sometimes YouTube cuts off your comments, your questions. Sorry, guys. So if I don't, read something, it's because it didn't post for some reason. It does seem to filter certain words, like certain trigger words. So just keep that in mind if you seem to be ignoring your YouTube question. Schmoozen says, bro, don't lie to us. You stashed that $500. No, I didn't stash it. I used it for the trip to learn, to go learn Shine song. It was, again, it was like, that's the big thing about manifesting is like when it's in alignment with your purpose and you have a good reason for calling in what you want, it amplifies the whole process. That's a huge part of it as well. Okay. So bacterial and fungal infections of the genitals, looking for metaphysical reasons. Maybe it's because in your past life you slept around and I don't know, I'm not, it's probably simply, make sure you cleanse this area every day. Ozone is great for this type of stuff. Also, Pau de arco bark, it kills fungal infections, viral infections, bacterial infections, natural remedies. I don't think there's necessarily a deep metaphysical reason here. I know we often want to look for these things, but it's probably just something very simple. So don't overcomplicate it. Put some pau de arco bark on it. Get like, you can either brew the tea, pau de arco, you can dump it on there directly, and drink it every day as well. Make sure you're checking your diet, all that stuff. Okay, Santino says, will you please talk about the relationship between semen retention and karma? I'm 24. How often should, okay, that's a whole different question. Relationship between semen retention and karma. I mean, karma is simply action, reaction. You do something, there's an action, there's an implication. Every force has a reaction. So as far as semen retention, I'm not sure, exactly the context of what you're asking here, but simply, I would say, I don't know if it necessarily changes your karma, but when you practice semen retention, you're no longer wasting this energy and you have more energy to create with. So, I'm not exactly sure the context you're asking about there. It's not like you start practicing semen retention, everything bad you did in your life is just erased. 24, how often should I release, or is it even necessary to at all? Well, my general rule with semen retention is if you feel good, if you feel balanced, keep going. If you start feeling stagnant, if you start feeling excessively, just crazily sexually frustrated, all you can think about is sex, excessively lustful, energy is not circulating properly. So, make sure you're doing the sexual kung fu practices and all that. But in general, the guidelines for how often a man can ejaculate, um, in your 20s, you can, I would say once every 4 to 6 days. If you that's like at the most. If you really, really want to ejaculate as often as you can, you could every 4 to 6 days. Once you hit 30s, it's more like, 6 to 8 days to 2 weeks. It depends. But the general rule is, if you ejaculate, you feel completely wiped out, depleted, you should go for longer. Thank you, seahorse. Okay, so the technique about um, okay, so one of the techniques I taught in a video where you're moving your hips. Um, I mean, experiment with what works for you. The inhale and the exhale in these types of practices, it doesn't have to be like you have to inhale on this movement, you have to exhale on this movement. It's just like when I'm teaching these things, it's like that's how I do it, but you can experiment with both. So it's like, I can't really, maybe I could stand up and do it, but in general, I tend to, what do I do? It probably changes for me, but I think right now, as you straighten your back, so your hips kind of come forward, you straighten your back, you inhale, draw the energy up, exhale as you kind of pull back. That's how to pumping sexual energy up the spine is the YouTube video where I teach a movement that will help you to move the sexual energy up your spine and out of the genitals as you're having sex. Daniel Magana says, what do you do to improve sleep or remove bags from under the eyes? So bags under the eyes usually means your kidneys are depleted. So you want to take care of that. So more rest, more quiet time in your life, meditation, qigong, take some kidney tonifying herbs. Showu formulation from Dragon Herbs is a great go-to just because it's safe for, to take indefinitely. There's some more, I could say, high intensity herbal formulas, but that's something that's a bit more specialized for people. But as far as improving sleep, make sure that you are this is the thing, is if you're like busy all day, you're all this busyness, and if you're like on your phone, on electronic screens, like right up until the moment you go to sleep, you're not going to be able to fall asleep because your mind's still very, very busy. So having a transition from the busyness of your day into your night is very important. I like to turn off, like bright lights. I turn off all my screens. No screens for me about usually about 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours before going to bed, because blue light stimulates cortisol, keeps you awake. Your body says, "Oh, the sun's out. Let's be busy." So removing bright lights and especially screens, I would say 2 hours before going to bed. Do some yoga, do some stretching, some gentle breathing exercises, kind of wind down. I like to do inversions. I have an inversion rack. I usually hang up there for about 10 minutes. You can also just do, shoulder stand, basic inversion stuff, but just having like a winding down routine that gets you out of your head into your body. Triple heater sound. Raise your hands up, palms face down, exhale the he sound, but just subvocally. Feel like your body's an empty tube, just clearing everything, especially the energy out of your head. Do this when you're laying down. It vents excessive energy, helps to clear the triple heater system, which really regulates heat in the body. And we often have a lot of heat. If you're having insomnia, trouble sleeping well, you have heat in your head. You need to get it out. So that's a really, do that until you start yawning, basically. You can do it for 5 to 10 minutes. Embrace the Trail says, is it wrong to have multiple women who you see for sexual pleasures until you find one you can grow with? I mean, nothing's really right or wrong. Only you can determine what's right or wrong. It's, um, but there's kind of the issue of, the entanglement of energies. This is something I feel like I talk about all the time. Though it seems like it's been a little while since people have asked this. I feel like it's been like almost every day people are asking this. Sorry if this is, old news to a lot of you, but every person you sleep with, you're mixing your energy with. You are basically, you're taking on their patterns, they're taking on your patterns, your karma, your deep ancestral stuff. It's a very deep exchange. So it can get sticky, right? When you're sleeping with a lot of different people and you're like, oh, I'm having all these weird emotional patterns. I don't quite feel like myself. I don't know where this is coming from. It just gets difficult to discern what's your stuff and what's theirs. And if you want, if you're a master alchemist, an inner alchemist, and you can process all this stuff quickly, that's great. But for most people, it can become overwhelming. So just be aware of that fact, right? And then, just be selective of who you choose to mix your energy with. But other than that, it's, whatever brings you harmony and balance and fulfillment in your life. Seek the Geek says, I'm getting a lot of pain in my kidney area. I'm thinking it must be the adrenals. What's the best thing for that? Well, it could be a lot of things. You spend a lot of time sitting down. There's various things to be contributing to this, but generally, yes, pain in the kidney area, kidneys or adrenals. And I kind of just mentioned what you want to do to support the kidneys. So, those things. Stretching as well. Good stretch routine. Open up the low back, everything. Nivtiz says, is there a way to never ejaculate again, only when you intend to create another human? I tried doing this for a long time, when I was first getting to semen retention, and I guess kind of brings us to another question here, which is how often do I ejaculate? But, I got into this practice, was like, yeah, I'm never ejaculating again, no matter what. And it didn't happen. There was always a point where I would have a wet dream, I would have a nocturnal emission. I was like, and it was always frustrating. I was like, oh no, I lost everything. I have to start all over. And this, 2 to 3 years, this was the cycle of like, I'm never ejaculating. Then, maybe I would accidentally go over the edge during sex or, nocturnal emission. And eventually I realized that, you're there's a function for ejaculation for a man. I don't think it's realistic or even necessarily healthy to never ejaculate again. I don't think, it actually tends to help regulate the endocrine system, clear out old fluid. There's a process of it for men, right? Ejaculation is kind of a clearing, but if you're doing that every day, you're just throwing your life force away, right? But if it's in harmony and balance, cyclic, then you don't actually lose anything. And it helps kind of keep things moving for yourself. So there's a balance between extremes. This is very important. You know, um, a lot of guys get really rigid about this and, like, oh, I'm so badass. I've been holding my semen for 1,000 days. It's like, I get it. It's fun for a while. It gives you a big ego, but after 8 to 10 years of doing this, I'm like, okay, it's actually more about what makes me feel balanced and harmonious versus like, oh, I gotta tell guys that I'm so cool because I can retain for this long. So once you get out of the ego trip part of it, um, not saying that that's what you are. I had the intention, like, I never want to ejaculate again because I felt so good going for long periods of time. But once I started to basically rebuild my kidney adrenal system, it stopped depleting me to ejaculate if it was, at a certain time frame, which for me is about once a month. That's my ideal. That makes me feel the best. If I go longer than that, I start to sometimes my end. It feels like my testosterone lowers a bit. That keeps me feeling the best overall. So once a month for me, it's great. And also, especially when you're having a lot of non-ejaculatory sex, which is a whole different dynamic to it, a lot of fluid can get built up in the prostate, and that can cause like kind of like aching, even straight up pain. Like I was having pain in my pelvic floor area. I thought I had like prostate issues, and basically, well, it was a combination of, I think, not listening to my body when it was time to release, and having pelvic floor tension because I was doing all these Kegel stuff. So yeah, it's about balance. Okay, Lucius' question about, okay, if a gay person sleeps with another gay person, does he get yang or give? Does he get yang or does he give yang? Doesn't matter if he's active or passive. So same sex dynamics of sex between two males. I haven't experienced this firsthand, but my understanding is that there tends to be more yang overall in a same sex relationship, man and man, because men are more yang in nature. Uh, Obviously, we all have different aspects of yin and yang, like attractions based on yin and yang. So one partner will always be a bit more yin, but overall, the male energy, it's yang. So both men are getting yang. That's something that gay men can run into in this cultivation practice, is just to be aware that there may be an excessive amount of yang, and so simply supplement that. More yin, bringing more yin is what will balance that. So absorbing chi from the earth. I think I have the book right here. Let's see if I can find this. This is fun. There's a practice where you here it is right here. Oh, where'd it go? I saw it. There it is. Where it's like you I think this is a bit ridiculous, but you like go on the earth and pull the earth's yin into your penis. But you can just do qigong practices to pull the earth's yin chi up. Gardening, spending time with water, spending time in nature, anything to supplement the yin will benefit gay men who are doing these cultivation practices, because there's a lot of fire there. I am 33 years old. Okay. Rendell Frank says, could your diet affect your sexual performance negatively? And if so, what effects would there be? Yes, it definitely can. If you're eating garbage food, if you're eating oxidated oils, fried foods, high estrogen foods, estrogenic foods, uh, it's going to disrupt your hormonal system, disrupt your circulation, oxidation. Sodium is a big thing, like too much salt, especially just straight table salt, which is actually a byproduct of, um, industrial mining and things like that. It's a poison, basically. It has all those nasty laced chemicals in it. Don't use table salt, use sea salt. But too much sodium, most processed food has tons of salt in it. It's a vasoconstrictor. It constricts the blood vessels. It lessens your ability. It kills your circulation, basically, right? That can cause erection issues, overall health issues. So yes, your diet definitely affects your sexual health and your sexual performance. So eat healthy, eat real foods. Don't eat things out of a box. Try to get everything as natural to its as close to its natural state as possible. Punko J says, I've been reading TSOL repeatedly. You're talking about Tao Secrets of Love, I'm assuming. How can I start to implement more of these practices to focus on my purpose and gain more confidence while retaining my seed while not having sex? Well, do the practices, incorporate in your daily routine. I recommend Qigong, Microcosmic Orbit, the testicle breathing, orgasmic breathing practice. Just do it every day. That's it. You just have to have the time every day where you're doing these practices. You have to train. Create time in your day. For me, it's my morning. I have a very strong morning practice. It's like that's my priority. I don't even touch my phone or anything until my morning routine is complete. Cagny 201 says, when is your next private course? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by private course, but the next, offering I have is a masterclass I'm teaching next week. Primal Alchemy, all about manifestation. I was talking about at the beginning of this video, but you can find more information to that in my Instagram bio here on this YouTube video. Okay, Mazenson says, could you summarize the practice of tantric sex in 2 or 3 tips, please? Well, okay, my version of tantric sex would be basically you create a connection, a conscious connection, you and your partner, you connect together, open your hearts to each other, hopefully, right? Because without that heart connection, without a degree of resonance, when it's just a physical connection, it's usually like a battle. Like you're trying to take their energy, they're trying to take your energy. Physical sex alone usually depletes people in the end when that's the only uh, approach you have to it. But basically, again, you create a connection with your partner, a conscious connection. Spend some time looking into each other's eyes, breathing together, massaging their body, whatever, just, opening up your body and their body, your energy bodies together. And then basically you're creating a circulation internally of the energy because with what's happening during sex, you're becoming more and more aroused, more and more stimulated. For a man, that builds up to what usually would be an ejaculation. It's like, oh, can't hold anymore. Boom, out it goes. Skeet, skeet. um, So instead of that, you're creating this upward circulation by, there's a lot of groundwork to this, but basically you're using your mind and your breath to draw the energy up out of the genitals through the energy channels of the body and also simultaneously into your partner's body. So you're creating this circulation. That's basically it, is you're creating this circulation between you. And as the session progresses, it gets more and more intense. You can bring it to various areas. You may get into full body orgasm, cosmic orgasm. So basically, connect consciously with your partner, be mindful of your arousal level, be mindful of the level of stimulation, and draw the energy up rather than ejaculating it out. Rendell Frank says, do you eat fried foods in your diet and how often should someone eat them? I do not do fried foods. I do not recommend eating fried foods. I feel like shit if I eat fried foods. It's not good. You're getting nothing beneficial from them. All the nutrients are destroyed. The oil's oxidated usually, unless, it's like, maybe it's like the higher quality cooking oils. But even then, I don't recommend fried foods at all. You'll feel much, much better if you cut these from your diet. Sebastian says, for how many days does prolactin stay in the blood after an ejaculation? I don't know, honestly. I think you can kind of tell this for yourself in that when you stop feeling kind of lethargic and more yin, more feminine, more kind of lazy after an ejaculation, you start feeling that yang charge again. When I was first getting semen retention, it took me about a week to, uh, feel that again after an ejaculation. Now it takes me about 1 or 2 days. It depends. Oh, Seahorse says, you ever do classes on the road, seminar, like live events? Yes, I do some, and I'm planning on putting together like a retreat or a workshop event that's going to be open to anyone this year, at least one. So I'm still likely in the summer. I'm thinking maybe Probably August. I'm thinking in August, like retreat workshop somewhere in the United States, likely. Well, we'll see. I'll keep you guys updated about that. But it's all about, that's the most powerful work is in person, doing the work in like a different environment. You're there. That's where I've had, my biggest breakthroughs is in the retreat type setting. So definitely want to bring more of that out. The world's finally kind of open back up. Santino says, what do you think of psychedelics and what do you resonate with spiritually? Okay, well, as far as psychedelics, I think that they can be tools and they can also be crutches for people. I basically had this like Kundalini awakening, completely changed the course of my life when I had psilocybin mushrooms. I was like 19 years old, back in 2007, 2008 actually. Um, and it was, I had this incredible experience. I've talked about this several times probably, but I had this incredible just this energy surging up my spine, my consciousness blasting up, just feeling absolutely at one with the universe, understanding all these universal laws, getting crazy information downloaded, just like holy shit, massive heart opening. Just I was never the same after this experience, and this led me to be like, what just happened to me? What is this, and how do I bring more of this into my life? And of course, the first thing was, oh, I just need to take more drugs. That didn't work. I most of my trips after that just became very hellish experiences, which maybe amplified kind of karmic burn off in some ways, but also it became very obvious to me at a certain point that I couldn't progress any farther by using psychedelics, and that's what really drew me into the Eastern practices, yoga, meditation initially. Then I got into the Taoist practices, Qigong, Tai Chi, inner alchemy. And that's when I really realized that you can achieve the things you want from psychedelics without relying on this external thing. Because that's the thing is it can become kind of a trap after a while because you say, oh, well, I need this external thing to reach this, enlightenment experience, whatever. But it's not true enlightenment because it's coming from something else. When you create that from within yourself, through meditation practice, for example, it's much more profound because you stabilize that. That's the thing with when you're taking substances, it's like it's there, then it's gone. You're back to where you were before once it wears off. But when you are building the foundation of it with internal practice, you can sustain those states indefinitely, right? And so that's kind of my take on it now. Is like I for me, they kind of showed me what was possible, but after a while, they held me back. And to get beyond that, it took internal practices. And as far as what you resonate with spiritually, I'm not exactly sure. It's kind of a very vague question, but um, you know, I, I I resonate strongly with the Taoist philosophies, just of harmony and balance. It's about harmony and balance. What brings me harmony and balance? How can I support harmony and balance in the world around me? And also, how can I walk my own path? Like it's all about we all have our own unique path to experience. So whenever someone's like, "Oh, you have to do this one thing my way. You have to be my follower, worship me as a guru," otherwise you're going to hell. Be very careful about that type of thing. It's like we all have this very unique experience, our own evolution. We have we are all fractals of the same consciousness, the same kind of source, primordial consciousness, and have a unique, sweet experience and carve your own path. And be kind to people. Don't be an asshole. It's not that hard. Is it Seahorse says, is it built in men that they like to thrust their hips and why? I mean, I think thrusting of the hips is a natural human thing. It's um when we see someone moving their hips sexily, it's like ooh, it makes us feel because that's our sexual center. The hips are our sexual center. I did this master class a couple months ago all about opening up the pelvic floor and the hip area, which is the sexual center, awaken that energy there. And so moving the hips is very related to our sensuality, our sexual energy. It helps to move that energy through our body as well. It's like the movement of sex. It's the thrusting of the hips. That thrusting helps to pump this sexual energy up the spine and connect it to the rest of the body. So if you want to feel more juicy in your body and increase your sexual desire, move your hips. Move those hips, baby. Sebastian says, how would you approach an aura cleansing? What kind of habits one could implement? We're all energy and consistently. Okay, the first, there's many questions here. The first one is, how would you approach an aura cleansing? So the aura, my understanding of this is the aura is it's actually a readout of pretty much your physical body. It's much more related to the physical because anyone can see auras. It's not that hard. Just takes a little concentration, but it's more of a readout of the physical body. So it's like I don't think it's really efficient to be like, okay, I'm going to focus on the space around this person's body and clear that. Yes, there's going to be things in the space around your body, but usually this is a reflection of what's coming from within the body. So it's more efficient to work on, the various energy channels, the meridian system, the organs that they correlate to, the bones. we hold things in our organs, our blood, in our bones. It's like the deep issues, because the bones are reproducing the blood. That's your gene. That's your physical essence. That's the reproduction of yourself. And so a lot of like ancestral deep issues we have are stored in the bones, and they keep recycling themselves because the bones keep creating the blood. Anyway, so as far as clearing, you're talking about aura clearing. Like, my approach is to clear the whole body, inside and out, the energy body, the physical organs, everything. And there's simple tools to do that. Qigong is a major one. Inner smile, 6 healing sounds. What kind of habits one could implement? Yeah, so to emit the most pure positive energy, it's doing this work. It's clearing yourself. It's going in and removing the stagnant energy, removing the blockages. Again, for me, qigong, meditation, yoga, breath work. These are the tools to do it. Axonia X says, I've heard that masturbation is harmful. What is your take on this? Masturbation certainly can be harmful, or it can be highly beneficial. So this very contextual, and I'll feel it's going to be different for men and women too. We'll start with men because it's the more obvious. Ejaculation for men is a depletion of it's an expenditure of their gene, their life force, right? And if they do that every day, then they're spending more energy than they're taking in. They'll feel depleted. But if it's more imbalanced, they're taking more energy in than they're ejaculating out, then it's fine, right? So for men, the pattern is that uh, they're watching porn, they're being overstimulated sexually, and they're being driven to masturbate and ejaculate every single day. It's a very harmful habit that will destroy their testosterone, um, weaken their immune system, willpower, discipline, all that, right? But if a man uses masturbation as a way of generating their sexual energy, not ejaculating, getting in touch with their body, they're not watching porn and just like sending all this energy out here, gluing themselves to some weird, sexual scene. They're recycling the energy internally. They're focusing on their own body. They're again using it as a training tool to control their ejaculation and to bring this energy to the organs, the glands, the brain, charging themselves up with it. It's beneficial. For women, again, women don't really lose energy through orgasms the way men do, so it's not as big of a deal. I would say for women though, like I've heard that there's some women who get addicted to porn, the whole dopamine thing with that as well. Like every time you watch a porn video, you're just getting hit of dopamine. So for women, it could be a little impulsive like that, but they definitely don't need to worry about the gene loss through masturbation the way men do. The lucky for women. But again, it's really about, is masturbation just like you releasing tension out of your body, just sending energy out of your body because you can't, you don't have space to hold desire and arousal? Or is it a way of getting in touch with your divine sexual nature, that creative power and pleasure, and bringing that within yourself, recycling within yourself, right? This is the whole polarity of it, we could say. And else Barton says, can't access my masculine energies in the 30-day period. Well, again, it's going to be different for everyone. For me, it definitely wasn't like that in the beginning either. The first 3 or 4 years I was doing semen retention, I it served me to never ejaculate, at least go as long as I could, because yeah, anytime I would ejaculate, it took me like a week to feel kind of normal again. It took me 2 weeks to feel like I had, strong, masculine drive. But for me now, again, it's after years of doing Dantian work, building the kidney energy, and especially the sexual kung fu practices. I think this is very relevant to mention as well. I mentioned that I ejaculate once every 30 days. It's not that I'm just like jerking off and ejaculate. It's a very almost like ceremonious thing with my partner where I spend, usually quite a bit of time for making love, and I'm drawing the energy through my body, drawing it through the body. When you use these techniques that I teach some of my videos, I teach really in depth in my course, Multi-Orgasmic Man. You're basically extracting the essence of that semen. We're doing that in your practice every single day. You're drawing all this energy up. So then, after an hour of having sex like that, and then consciously sending that energy into my partner, it's an exchange. I don't feel any energy loss. I could keep going at that point, right? So it's very different. I think that's an important thing to mention when I talk about my personal frequency of emission, and that's the context. It's not just like, oh, it's 30 days, I'm gonna bust a nut to Pornhub. It's quite different than that. So that's another thing to be aware of. But again, after years and years of cultivation, when you really rebuild your kidney energy, you just get to that point much, much quicker. And again, this is why everyone will have their own cycle. Zeke the Geek says, do you think it's considered fried if you use olive oil on greens on medium heat for 5 minutes? I don't recommend heating olive oil. It oxidates, right? Cold pressed olive oil when it's cold, not heated up. It's great. It's great for you. At least my body likes it. But once you heat it, it starts. You want to use cooking oils. If you're going to cook with oil, use ones that stand up to high temperatures. Coconut oil, avocado oil, ghee. Animal fats. Those are much better for cooking with. That's what I recommend. Otherwise, they become inflammatory to the body. And Spartan 117 says, I felt like the sexual energy got frustrated. How can I keep the energy flowing? Do orgasmic breathing, do Qigong, meditate. It's all about, you have to have a practice where you're directly connecting with that energy and moving it through your body. And also, if you're doing the thing where you're just like, okay, not engaging with sex or like pleasure, sexual pleasure, I'm just going to try to like not do it. That can work for some people, but usually it's just a suppression. You're trying to like cut off this aspect of your being, which is actually a huge part of you. And it starts to drive you after a while because you haven't actually developed a relationship with it. You're just trying to like hide it in the closet and ignore it. And eventually it starts to talk to you, right? So developing a conscious connection to your sexual energy and a conscious expression of it is extremely important. Otherwise, you're just, you're trying to like push a spring with 500 pounds of pressure on it constantly, and eventually you give in. So the approach I have of sexual kung fu is very different than like suppression. Like, okay, well, I'm just not going to do it. Just don't think sexual thoughts. Don't do it. Again, you're not really getting to the root of the issue. It's about directly experiencing your sexual desire, your urges, that lustful energy, and transforming it. You're allowing it to move through your body. You're allowing it to be connected with the heart energy, love, connection, raises the vibration of it. And then you don't feel driven all the time by your sexual impulses. You feel comfortable experiencing arousal because it doesn't drive you to do weird things. So it's just, it's a deepening of the practice. It's having the strong practice. That's why I say semen retention alone isn't going to be necessarily even beneficial for a lot of men, because there's a lot of foundational work required to do this safely and effectively, where you don't just turn into a horny, angry person. William Zenowitz says, have you studied Brahmacharya? If so, thoughts on it? Yeah, I've studied Brahmacharya. That was kind of the first thing I heard about back in like 2011. And I was like, oh, okay, this guy said, never have sex, never ejaculate, never masturbate, and like you feel amazing. Like, all right, I'm gonna do this. And it lasted about 3 days. um, Brahmacharya is again, it's celibacy. It's no sex, no nothing. The whole thing is that in the context of like spiritual path, I think a lot of these kind of celibate spiritual paths came because sex could be something that was very distracting. They just didn't really know how to manage their sexual energy. So it was like, okay, well, just don't do it. Don't even like think about it. Don't even engage with it. Um, so if you're living in like a cave, you're living in a monastery, there's no women around as a man. Sure, it's easy to do that, but in here in the world, it's just not that realistic, which is why all these gurus, came to America in like the 60s and 70s. And there's all these scandals where they're sleeping with all their followers, but saying that they were celibate, just the human nature, right? So This is the whole thing with celibacy, is that if forcing yourself into it, it might work for a little while, but usually it becomes, again, this is the whole thing of you're not even actually working with your sexual energy. You're just cutting it off completely. And eventually it gains power, it grows power, like in the darkness in the closet, and it starts to drive you to do weird things. You see this over and over again with these guru type people. Um, so that's why I like the sexual kung fu approach, is you're not forcing anything. You don't need to be celibate. You can get all the benefits of celibacy. Simply learn to, have non-ejaculatory sex. Learn how to put that energy into use in your body. And in my opinion, it's more powerful. Okay, Bite Force Venezuela says, does traditional weightlifting exercise harm energy work? In my opinion and experience, no, it does not. I've been practicing weightlifting for 5 years now, over 5 years, been hitting the gym hard. I think it's very, very supportive of energy work, as long as, good form, you're getting enough rest, not overtraining. That if you're overtraining, yes, it will negatively impact your energetic practices. But overall, I think it supports it. For me, it really grounds things. And I actually do practices while I'm at the gym working out. I was mentioning to my Multi-Orgasmic Man group on a call yesterday. I was I like to do the elliptical at the end of my workouts. I'll do 30 minutes of just intense cardio, and I'm doing microcosmic orbit. I'm doing orgasmic breathing, running my sexual energy through, doing bone breathing. I'm just so it becomes another aspect of the practice. I think weightlifting is great, personally. I know I've heard people say that, like, oh, you can't have a chi body or a tai chi body if you um, weightlift because it constricts the muscles too much. I think it's bullshit. I do tai chi and qigong just fine. Maybe I'm not, the highest level master of it, whatever, but I feel the pung jing of doing tai chi, that crazy energy blast through the body. So I'm all about weightlifting. It's good for me. Ahan says, which practices are the basic? For sexual kung fu, emotional clearing practices, 16 sounds is a big one. I should probably make an updated video on this because I always mention it because it is such an important uh, practice of clearing negative emotions from the body, clearing excessive heat, which does build up when you're doing semen retention. Um, so 16 sounds, emotional clearing in general, breath work is huge for that. I have a whole breath work playlist. Breath work is really great just for keeping things flowing, keeping things, moving. I love breath work. Qigong, I have a whole playlist on Qigong. The Zhanzhuang practice, the standing meditation specifically, is the root of Qigong practice. So Zhanzhuang, microcosmic orbit. Those are basic practices. Also orgasmic breathing, which is basically microcosmic orbit, but you're adding in the sexual energy. So there's your foundationals. I did a video on, I think it was the foundations of sexual kung fu or something like that. It's the past month or two. And that's the video on YouTube. So that I cover all the foundational aspects of sexual kung fu. Punko J says, I'm currently in an inner smile workshop with my Qigong mentor. How can I get the most out of it and use that also in my sexual semen retention journey? Just practice it. It's the inner smile is a very simple but very profound practice. It's one of the foundational practices I teach in my course, and it's something that I've actually been working with it quite a bit recently. I've been experiencing a lot of, just this past week, a lot of tension in my solar plexus area, which is really interesting. As soon as I got back from my trip to Sedona, just constriction where it's like, I also had, a death in the family recently. So been a lot of processing with that as well. But anyways, this morning I was doing my sitting meditation practice, and I felt, again, it's just like this like band in my solar plexus. I'm like, whoa, what is this about? And I was like trying to, like, I need to will it away, use my force to get rid of it. And I was like, oh, inner smile. What if I just smile to it? So I do the inner smile, and immediately just like, whoop, I felt good. And I've just been really bringing that into, anyways, just practicing your smile. Just do it. It's not a difficult thing to do. It's just, you just do it, and you smile at everything. Smile within yourself, smile at the world around you. Notice how people react to you differently. It's very interesting. So it's simple, but it also builds in this profundity as you practice it. Okay, Nivtiz, I basically answer your question. Is there a way to never ejaculate again? Only when you intend to create another human. You can try, but the thing to understand is that the semen, it dies eventually. It's not like you make sperm, it's like, okay, I'm keeping this going forever. Eventually, it dies and it either is reabsorbed by your body, it exits through your urine, or you ejaculate it out in a nocturnal emission. So I would say the majority of men who are doing semen retention long term, they have nocturnal emissions eventually. There's a lot of them who do and say that they don't, but they do, because they, well, no, I'm 5 years, bro, crushing it. The ego thing, right? So eventually, the body usually releases the semen at some point, and I think this is part of kind of balancing, the system as well, because uh, if it's like once a month, well, it's every 3 months, whatever, it's quite different than once a day, right? This is just kind of releasing old fluids and things like that. So um, you can try doing a lot of alchemical practice. I would say is one of the big things where you're really putting that energy to work, transforming the form of it and all that. Go for it. He doesn't exist says, I used to hold it in at the point of no return and I think I messed something up. You have to be careful about the forceful, like squeezing, the strong kegling at the point of no return or using the $1 million point. I do not recommend these techniques. That's not what I teach. I teach something quite different. So you have to be careful with that. The whole thing is you should never get to the point of no return in the first place. Because once you're there, it's too late. There's not much you can do. So it's all about preventing that point in the first place. That's the whole, basically, the real uh, the real practice there. Exonia X says, how do you transmute that energy? Talking about sexual energy, sorry if I kind of got this out of context here, but basically the transmutation of I would say sexual energy, if that's what we're talking about here, um, is you're doing work with the energy channels of the body. I always start with the microcosmic orbit. It's the basic one, up the back of the body, down the front of the body. You get familiar with that pathway, you start to move it, circulate it every day, and then you could start to bring your sexual energy through that. So, for women, from the ovaries, the yoni space, breathe up through that microcosmic orbit pathway, bring it throughout the body. Breast massage is also very important for women. And as it moves through the body, it naturally changes its form. Also, there's a lot of Dantian work is a very important part of this as well, because the Dantian, this energy center in the belly, Dantian means elixir field. It's this energetic center that builds as you work with it, and you start to draw your sexual energy into that, and you draw other types of energy from the body as well. It creates this alchemical cooking of your sexual energy, changes the form of it. It's more of an advanced process, but I teach that in my Immortal Energy Arts online academy. Yeah, just moving it through the body changes the shape of it, the form of it as it moves. It circulates, and it's like taking ice and melting it into water and purifying that into steam. And also, you're putting it into creative outlets. I think is very important. I think everyone who's doing sexual cultivation should have some sort of artistic outlet. That's very important. Sebastian says, I noticed the longer I go on steam retention, my eyes get a glint. They shine. When I was releasing with porn, they were dull and kind of looking lifeless. Why does this happen? Your eyes are very much connected to you, your deepest essence. They say the eyes are the gateway to the soul. You can tell pretty much everything about a person by looking into their eyes. You can see. You can see when people are holding sadness, anger, lying, kindness. You can tell. When someone's depleted, yeah, their eyes look kind of lifeless. They're dull. When someone's healthy and happy, they have this shine in their eyes. That's a big thing, is these shiny eyes. So, yeah. Okay. Adventures with Janice saying, "Do you about to lose my Instagram feed? It's going to cut off in 20 seconds. So I'll pull the live back up. This is an interesting question, though. Basically, the question of emotional cycles between male and females. So I'm going to restart my Instagram feed, jump back on, and I'll answer it. It cuts me off at an hour for some reason. Okay, give me 1 second, guys. Old Instagram. All right. Okay, so there was this question about emotional cycles, males and females having like emotional types of cycles. And obviously for women, they're strongly cyclical. The lunar cycle for women, they're the menstrual cycle, which it's a 28-day cycle, and a woman's emotions become more volatile at different aspects of the cycle. So yeah, women have this lunar cycle, 28-day cycle. It's kind of a longer drawn out cycle, whereas men's cycles typically is more of a solar cycle. It's day to day. Most men are ejaculating every day, and kind of in regards to this, men usually become much more moody and kind of withdrawn uh, after they've ejaculated because it's they feel kind of like they've emptied themselves. They feel very vulnerable, and they kind of just feel like kind of protecting themselves, kind of going within. They don't feel like engaging as much in that post-ejaculatory, that post-nut state. Um, and so, and then, after the man's recovered, the refractory period's over. He has more of this, and so he typically feels a bit more like he has himself together. I think can be more prone to like anger and frustration though. So, but the interesting thing about when a man practices semen retention is I think he gets closer to a woman's cycle. Not to say it's a feminine thing, but just, for example, if a man's ejaculating once a month, then his yang energy is building and building and building in that month, and then eventually it does kind of plateau at a certain point. So at that point, you may choose to ejaculate, and then he may feel a bit more yin, a bit more kind of maybe a little more emotional, a bit more vulnerable, and things like that for a day, 2 days, 3 days. For some men, it takes a week or more, right? And then his energy starts to build back up into this masculine as that testosterone improves. So I don't know. Maybe that's insightful or not, but that's my take on that. Okay, Maliak says, I've been doing Qigong and transmuting my sexual energy a bit. My energy feels fiery. Recommendations on how to cool it down or balance it. Good question. This is extremely important for men. Uh, Grounding is number one. Jan Zhuang practice, standing meditation, that's extremely essential. In my course, Multi-Orgasmic Man, I teach how you really wire wire yourself, create a grounding wire so you bring the energies of the earth, the cool earth chi into your sexual center, combine that with your sexual energy to cool it down, makes it much more uh, easier to manage as males our sexual energy is very volatile, and it makes it more digestible, it's easier to work with. So that's a big thing is um, connecting, grounding the sexual energy with the earth. More yin in your life, right? Spending more time in nature, spend less time in front of screens and things like that, moving your body, stillness practice, meditation, things like that. Derek Trevino, what's up, Derek? He says, try to ask this before, but didn't pop up on your end. I know you practice AM because you're talking about Angion method. This is basically it's penis exercises that build your blood vessel growth in your penis. It's phenomenal practice. I talk about this every now and then. Anyways, I know you practice this. Curious as to how you schedule sessions around sex. I find if I do it too close to sex, my erection quality suffers a bit. So I do my schedule with it kind of changes, but usually I'm doing it every other day. Sometimes I'll do it 2 days on, 1 day off, depending what's the different methods I'm working with. I only have this issue if I train too much, if I have too long of sessions. So for me, my sweet spot's about 15 minutes, some days 10 minutes, usually about 15 to 20 minutes. Um, and usually, if I've rested an hour or two, my erection potency is completely back. So, or you can just, you know, plan on not having sex the days you're doing it. But in general, I would say just cut back a bit on the time you're doing it, make sure you're recovering properly. And that's worked well for me. I usually have actually improved erection quality the days I'm doing this exercise. Again, that's the Angion method I'm talking about here. Angion. Look that up. It's phenomenal exercise for men who want to enhance their penises. Unimus says thoughts on wet dreams when undergoing celibacy and sexual kung fu. Well, here's the whole thing. I was talking about this a lot before. Basically, celibacy for a lot of people is them simply suppressing their natural sexual energy, their natural sexual desire. Like that's a major part of your being, and just to be like, well, it's not going to do that. It just doesn't work for most people. So your wet dream is your subconscious saying, hey, you're not feeding this important part of yourself, and you're asleep. You big dummy. We're gonna go have sex in the astral plane and shoot a load all over the place, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. So this is a split within your being that this small part of your being, your conscious mind saying, okay, I'm just not going to do this. It'll be easy just to cut this thing off and I won't have to deal with it anymore. But you see how your subconscious mind is still very much desiring this. So you got to correct that split. This is why I don't think it's efficient to just be like, oh, I'm just not even going to deal with the whole thing of sex or sexual desire. I'm just going to ignore it. It doesn't work for most people. This type of thing happens at best, wet dreams at best, at worst, really weird kind of sexual things that come out after a while, weird things that happen. So that's why my whole approach to sexual kung fu is that you're not cutting off anything. You're not suppressing anything. You're fully engaging in your sexual nature, but in a balanced way, in a conscious way. Otherwise, you're never actually dealing with these issues you have around, poor sexual habits and things like that. You're just ignoring them for years and years, and then they come back and you haven't resolved anything. So it's about facing them directly, changing your relationship to them, changing sex or even self-pleasure to being something that you actually benefit from and cultivate energy with, charge yourself up with, rather than being a depletion. That's what, my experience with this has been. Christopher A. Taylor says, is your picture for your next class in Sedona? Yes, the picture was from Sedona. I was just there last week. Imagine Wolf says, should I use willpower to retain or just do the exercises, Qigong and breath work and retain as a byproduct or both? Well, obviously, it requires willpower to practice retention. But again, I do not recommend doing retention if you don't have some practice where you're working with the energy. Otherwise, it just builds up in your genitals. It gets stuck in there and it amplifies all those kind of lower energy center patterns, which is fine if that's what you want. But, if you don't want to just be stuck in like the material, take sex from people, get money, that's what happens when it's stuck down there. Right. And that's fine. That's part of the human experience. But I like to kind of elevate that energy a bit, make it a bit more purposeful, right? So if you don't have open energy channels, if you don't know how to move the energy through your body, it becomes limited in what you actually experience and the benefits you experience from practicing semen retention. Eventually, it just kind of becomes stagnant and stuck. Jim Axon Design says, do you know Kriyas and can they happen to penis or testicles after Kundalini awakening? So Kriyas in this context, I guess you're talking about like just kind of spontaneous movements in the body, jerkings, spasms, vibrations. I'm familiar with this. Do they happen to the penis or testicles after Kundalini awakening? It certainly can happen anywhere in the body. Mohammed says, what do you think about masturbating while fasting? Well, it depends on your masturbating. If you're ejaculating at the end, it's not doing you any good, especially if you're in a fasted state because you have no resources to replenish that and it'll pull from your organs and glands and your brain, spinal fluid. But if you're doing like sexual kung fu practices, Sure, that's fine. Sepe says, "Hey, sorry if I'm saying a name wrong." Says, "Hey, Jonathan, I just learned from you to focus on my sensations in my body when self-pleasuring. It is like the best thing ever. I practiced semen retention for a long time now and I used to just suppress urges. Thank you. It was the thing that was messing, moving the energy through my body." Yeah. Thank you for, sharing this. This is the whole thing is doing semen retention based on like suppression, and it's not sustainable. Like, yeah, maybe, a few months, a year, maybe a couple years, you're like, yeah, semen retention, but eventually you're not moving the energy. You're not allowing yourself to engage in sexual orgasmic bliss, right? It just drives you crazy after a while. So the natural thing is to allow that energy to move, you know, and it's just much much better that way. It's sustainable and it's effortless. It's semen retention just becomes something enjoyable. It's just like it's an effortless lifestyle habit versus something you're every day like, okay, I have to do this, and I can't ejaculate today. It's not very sustainable in that way. Okay, guys, thanks for joining. Again, I have a masterclass coming up next week. Primordial Alchemy, all about manifesting, learning what's keeping you from bringing what you want into your life, how to create massive change, accelerate your spiritual path, align yourself, all aspects of your being. You're going to learn the very, very amazing, magical, powerful primordial Qigong form. Find more information in my Instagram bio here on the description of this video. That is next Friday. And take care, guys. We'll see you soon.